The wedding hall was flooded with sunlight, but Aariz felt only darkness pressing against his chest as he stood beside a woman who could not stand beside him. Outside, the afternoon sky stretched wide and blue, as if mocking the storm raging inside his heart. He had agreed to this marriage not for love, not for hope, but for survival. And as he looked at the wheelchair beside him, at the fragile woman with silent eyes and trembling hands, he wondered how fate could be so merciless, and yet so mysterious. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of love to heal even the deepest wounds, take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Whisper Tales 3. Your support keeps these heartfelt stories alive. Aariz Malik had never imagined his life would twist into something so complicated. After his wife passed away during childbirth, he was left alone to raise his 4-year-old son Hadi. The world had not given him time to grieve. Bills piled up like accusations. His small mechanic shop in the busy streets of Hyderabad struggled to survive. Relatives who once promised support slowly faded into polite excuses. Aariz became father and mother in one exhausted body, waking before sunrise, cooking breakfast, dropping Hadi at preschool, working until his hands were blackened with grease, and returning home with a forced smile. Hadi was his light. The little boy's laughter filled the tiny apartment with warmth. But Aariz could see the questions in his son's eyes whenever he asked why other children had mothers at school events. Aariz's heart broke silently each time. He tried to be strong, but loneliness wrapped around him every night like a cold blanket. Then came the proposal that felt less like destiny and more like a transaction. Sumbul Farooq was the only daughter of a wealthy textile businessman who had suffered a devastating spinal injury in a car accident 2 years earlier. She had survived, but the doctor said she would never walk again. Rumors whispered that her fiancé had abandoned her the moment he learned she would spend her life in a wheelchair. Her father, desperate and aging, wanted security for her future. He approached Aariz with an offer that seemed impossible to refuse: financial support for Hadi's education, investment in his mechanic shop, and a stable future, in exchange for marriage. Aariz felt insulted at first. He was not a charity case. But as he looked at Hadi sleeping on a thin mattress, hugging a worn-out toy car, reality crushed his pride. He agreed, convincing himself that he could be a good companion, even if love never bloomed. The wedding took place during the day, simple and quiet. Sunlight poured through the windows, illuminating Sumbul's pale face. She wore a soft ivory dress, and her long hair framed features that still carried a trace of former joy. But her eyes were distant, as though she had already accepted a life without happiness. After the ceremony, Aariz wheeled her to the car. The silence between them felt heavier than words. He did not know how to talk to a woman whose dreams had been shattered. She did not know how to trust a man who had married her out of obligation. The early days of their marriage were awkward. Aariz converted the living room into a comfortable space for Sumbul, installing rails and adjusting furniture. He treated her with respect, but there was a careful distance in his touch. Hadi, however, was different. Children did not understand pity or pride. He saw only a gentle woman with kind eyes. Slowly, Hadi began spending afternoons beside Sumbul, showing her his drawings and telling her stories about school. Aariz often returned from work to find them laughing softly. Something inside him shifted each time he saw that light return to her face. Sumbul had once been a literature teacher. Before the accident, she loved poetry and morning walks under blooming trees. Now she spent hours staring at the window, watching sunlight move across the floor. Aariz noticed this and began placing fresh flowers near her chair every morning before leaving for work. He never mentioned it, but she noticed. Weeks turned into months. Financially, Aariz's life improved. The shop expanded. Customers increased. Yet what surprised him most was not the money. It was the subtle change in his heart. He found himself looking forward to coming home, to hearing Sumbul's soft voice reading to Hadi, to sharing quiet lunches bathed in golden afternoon light. But Sumbul struggled with her own battles. One day, during physiotherapy at home, frustration overwhelmed her. Her legs refused to respond. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered that she was a burden. Aariz, standing at the doorway, felt something crack inside him. He had never seen her so vulnerable. That afternoon something changed. It was a bright day, sunlight spilling generously across the balcony. Hadi had gone to a neighbor's house to play. Aariz found Sumbul sitting alone, staring at her reflection in the glass. Her expression was not of sadness this time, but of resignation. He walked toward her slowly, kneeling so their eyes met at the same level. He spoke not with pity, but with sincerity, telling her she was not a burden, that she had brought warmth back into a house that once echoed with grief. He told her that Hadi laughed more because of her, that he worked harder because he wanted her to see the world beyond that chair. In that moment, Aariz realized his marriage was no longer an agreement. It had become something fragile and precious. He leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, not out of obligation, but love that had quietly grown in the spaces between silence. And then it happened. Sumbul felt something surge inside her, not magic, not a miracle born of fantasy, but a fierce wave of determination fueled by emotion. Her fingers tightened on the armrest. Aariz instinctively reached to steady her, but she stopped him with a look. Slowly, trembling, she pushed herself upward. For a second, the world seemed to pause. Her legs shook violently, muscles long weakened protesting the effort, but she did not sit back down. With tears streaming down her face, she stood, unsteady, fragile, but standing. Aariz's breath caught in his throat. It wasn't a dramatic cure. It wasn't effortless. It was painful, imperfect, and real. But it was the first time since the accident that Sumbul stood on her own. Doctors later explained that emotional breakthroughs sometimes ignite dormant strength. Months of therapy, hidden progress, and relentless practice had prepared her body. But it was belief, true, unconditional belief, that pushed her over the edge. From that day forward, recovery became their shared journey. Aariz woke early to assist with exercises before heading to work. Hadi cheered every tiny step she took. The house that once carried silent sorrow now overflowed with sunlight and laughter. Sumbul did not become a marathon runner overnight. Some days she fell, some days pain forced her back into the chair, but she no longer saw herself as broken. She saw herself as fighting. And Aariz, he no longer felt like a man who had made a sacrifice. He felt like a man who had found love in the most unexpected place. Their story spread quietly among neighbors, not as a tale of miracle healing, but as proof that compassion can awaken strength, that love can rebuild what tragedy destroys. Before this story ends, take a moment to comment "Love heals" if you believe even the smallest act of kindness can change a life. As the sun set one peaceful afternoon, Aariz watched Sumbul walk slowly across the balcony, Hadi holding one of her hands. The sky was painted in soft gold and pink, but the real miracle was not in the horizon. It was in the resilience of a woman who refused to surrender, and a man who learned that sometimes what begins as duty can blossom into devotion. If this story touched your heart even a little, please like, share, and engage with the video. Your support helps more stories of hope reach those who need them most. Because sometimes, love does not just make someone stand on their feet. It makes them stand for life.